Welcome back to Kavanaugh's Corner. Today in the channel we're going to be talking about a film that just came out on 4K, and it's the first time it's been on 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray. I was so pumped when I first heard about this. There really was no describing how excited I was when I found out this was coming to 4K. This was probably my #1 most wanted film after The Abyss came out in 4K. And I've always loved this movie, unabashedly love it. And I know it's not obviously the best written film, and it's definitely not the most realistic, but it's a movie that I just have a blast every time I watch it. And going back and rewatching it is like seeing an old friend. And that is, of course, Twister. And Twister here stars Helen Hunt, Bill Paxton, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Alan Ruck, just a bunch of fantastic actors and actresses. Jamie Gertz is also absolutely outstanding in this movie. Carrie Elways is great as the scumbag villain that's in the film. And really the star of the show are the Tornadoes. That is really the big star. And this is, again, first time on 4K, completely remastered from the ground up. And I read not long before this disc came out this week that Jan de Bont actually was supervising this new transfer, and they were actually able to color correct the film in a completely new way and use the high dynamic range that is now on this format to make sure that not only the colorization of certain scenes is more to the original intent of the filmmakers, but also to make sure that the movie was lit correctly. And that is a really interesting thing. Today we're going to be talking about the picture quality, the audio quality, because this has an all-new Dolby Atmos mix, and we're going to talk about the special features because there are a few new things here and a couple old things as well. Now, before I go into the review, if you're new to the channel here, I review physical media, so movies on Blu-ray and 4K. It's really a passion of mine, and I collect these films. These movies are not all sent to me. I get a few sent to me every now and then, but Warner Brothers does not send me movies as of yet. I'm hoping they will soon. You heard me. Anyway, so this was bought with my own money, and ironically enough, I had this pre-ordered from back in like the beginning of May, and it kind of sucks because this was supposed to be a steel book, and my order got completely messed up. The steel books, something happened with the supply chain according to Amazon, and I was very lucky enough to find this at a nearby Target. So I got very, very lucky with that. I think it was one of maybe 3 left, and that was it. Nobody else had it. No Walmarts had it. Nobody had this thing. A little history on Twister on home video before we kind of get into the review. I've actually already reviewed a different release of Twister once before, and I'll leave a little tag up top or whatever they're calling it now. But now we have the 4K with HDR, Dolby Atmos, the works. And one thing I have to say about this new 4K is that the film is now fundamentally different. And it's fundamentally different in all the best ways possible. So talking about the picture quality now, with the high dynamic range that's on this disc, it's only HDR10. There's no Dolby Vision on the disc, which is a shame, but the HDR10 on this has completely changed the look of the film, and it is shocking when the movie starts up. It's not very noticeable during the opening credit sequence, and maybe even not that noticeable during the sequence where you see Joe, Helen Hunt's character, as a child, except for those flashes of lightning, which are now strikingly bright and almost bluish hued, almost like an arc light. And it is really impressive when that lightning lights up, especially since the rest of the scene is now much darker. And that is something that you're going to notice when you pop in this 4K, is that the movie looks extraordinarily darker now. It's not in every scene, but it's appropriate where it should be darker. Earlier versions of Twister, going all the way back to that original DVD and maybe even in the theaters — I was a little too young to see this in the theaters when it came out. I would have been 6 years old. But the film now, anytime when the characters are approaching a storm or a tornado and the skies start to darken, the overall scene is now darker. And that works incredibly well. The movie as a whole has now been adjusted to the point where the look of these scenes now match what these characters are dealing with. Nighttime scenes are very dark, and it's not a bad thing. Although I will say the scene where the tornado hits the drive-in, there are a couple shots here and there in that scene where the black levels are not that great. And that may be my one gripe for this disc, is that that nighttime sequence, and maybe one other in particular, just a few shots here and there is some not so great black crush happening with the picture, and you lose some detail level. But again, it is a nighttime scene. You got a tornado hitting. It is what it is. But the rest of the scenes now are, again, shockingly different. When Bill and Joe are first chasing after that first tornado that they see, and they're in the yellow Jeep there, as they're driving towards the tornado, you can actually see from shot to shot, they progressively darkened the overall look of the movie. And I noticed it happening, and I audibly went, "Oh my God, wow, that's darker. Oh." And then it kind of dawned on me to what was happening. And it's really, really cool to see. And it's really impressive that the technology we have now makes this possible. It's really, really cool. The other thing that's big in terms of difference, in terms of picture quality here, is color timing, as I mentioned, has now been completely redone for the entire film. Colors now are much more deeper, much more vibrant than they ever were before. Not in a saturated sense, but the movie as a whole has a much more accurate color palette than it ever did before. That red Dodge Ram, seen against the brown dirt roads and the green grassy plains and fields of Oklahoma, really jumps out at you now. And those tornadoes have never looked better. The twisters throughout the film, even though they are CGI effects from 1996, they look really, really good, and they hold up incredibly well. The only one that I would say that doesn't really hold up well is the twin tornadoes, the sisters that are on the water where you get the cow, you know. That part, it's a little iffy now in 4K, but it still works in the context of the movie. It totally, totally works. It's a much more engulfing experience now that that color timing has been adjusted. The going green sequence, that phenomenon of the sky turning that almost emerald green, it's stunning. The first scene where Bill goes out and he's, you know, touching the dirt and watching it fly in the air, that shot is unbelievable. And you really get that true sense of that green color. I mean, it's very, very green. And anytime they're approaching a tornado now during the beginning of the tornado stages, you get a hint of that green on and off throughout the film. And it's such a nice touch. The storm sequences now really do look and are lit as if they are, in a storm. Like these actors and actresses are really in the middle of it. And I think that mix of physical effects and CGI, the in-camera stuff, it just works so well. Detail level on this disc is pretty good too. I wouldn't say this is the most incredibly detailed disc I've seen, but it looks great. And I think the little nuances of like seeing the damage on the truck and the increasing scars and cuts on Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt as the movie goes on. And all those things are much more noticeable now thanks to the increased resolution. In terms of film grain, the grain in this is pretty minimal. I'd call it a very light grain. It's very hard to notice any kind of film grain. It has been mitigated. I wouldn't call it heavy DNR. There is still definition to the picture. It's not washed out. It's not, no kind of AI seemingly has been used here to wipe out the film grain or, artificially raise the definition of the film. Not from what I could see and not from what I've read about with this new transfer. But the movie just looks very clean. And there's that hint of film grain without it being very heavy. Now, I have nothing against film grain, and this was definitely a step in the right direction compared to that original Blu-ray that came out many years ago, which seemed to be almost too smooth. This one here is just right. I wish they kept maybe a little more film grain in, but again, it still works the way that it is, so no complaints there. Now, the big one with this, besides the picture quality, is of course that all-new Dolby Atmos track. And it is a completely different Atmos track from the Turbine one, the German release I showed you earlier. It is a completely different mix, and I will tell you right now, if you've got a surround sound system that can properly handle that Dolby Atmos, please apologize to your neighbors for me. That is the most incredible Atmos sound mix I have ever heard in my life. I'm not trying to be overblown here. I'm not trying to make it more dramatic by saying that is the best Atmos mix I have ever heard. It is one of a kind. It is booming. It's loud, but it's also very, very well balanced. And there are some new additions that I noticed. There are some new little sound effects that are added in here and there. There's a lot of overhead usage in this, and the overheads are used really, really well to kind of put you right smack dab in the middle of one of these storm sequences. It's a real humdinger of an audio track, and the score sounded incredible. The music, the soundtrack, all the different songs that accompany the movie sounded really well. The dialogue was crystal clear, but really the star of the show is those sound effects. They are unbelievable, and the storm sequences now sound better and beefier, and I cannot recommend it enough just on the sound alone for this disc. I mean, the fact that they went back and redid the picture is one thing, but that audio track is the real reason to own this disc. It is absolutely amazing stuff. In terms of special features, this does have a new featurette called The Legacy of Twister, Taken by the Wind, which is more or less a 15-minute interview with director Jan de Bont, who is not only just a really great director, but a phenomenal director of photography. This guy did Die Hard, Hunt for Red October, Black Rain, Lethal Weapon 3, kind of a guilty pleasure of mine, but he's done some really great work over the years, and he talks about kind of some behind the scenes aspects of the film and working with the actors and the writers and everything. Michael Crichton was one of the writers of this film. I know I've read once that the movie was rewritten quite a few times by a bunch of ghostwriters, but you know, he talked about working with Steven Spielberg, and it's a nice little featurette. It's just nothing too crazy. There's also a commentary track with Jan de Bont and visual effects supervisor Stefan Fangmeyer. That's from previous releases. There's also featurettes called Chasing the Storm, Twister Revisited, Anatomy of a Twister, and the HBO first look of the making of Twister, which is from way back when this movie came out. And there's also the Van Halen music video for the song Humans Being. So that is pretty much everything you got in terms of special features there. It is only one disc with a digital code, so there's no standard Blu-ray. But I have to say, this is a must-buy. Even if you don't like this movie, I have to recommend it. If you're a home theater enthusiast, this is the one to get. This is the ultimate home theater show-off movie, especially for sound. Picture-wise, it's pretty impressive, but audio-wise, this is A1. I was hoping it would be that way, and it fulfilled my wishes in every way, shape, and form. Twister on 4K is an absolute knockout. So I'll leave a link in the description below that goes to Amazon so you can pick up a copy of Twister. The movie's kind of hard to come by right now. As I mentioned earlier, there's some supply chain issues going on. Not really sure what's happening there. But I will say it's worth picking up. Check the link. Hopefully it'll actually be working and they'll have some more copies in so you guys can pick this up. If you use that link, it does help me out here on the channel. Helps me get more movies as time goes on so I can review them for you here. But that's it for today for Kavanaugh's Corner. I just want to thank you all again for coming back to the channel here. If you liked this video, hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel so I can keep bringing you more videos like this. I love you guys very much. Please stay safe, keep collecting, and take it easy.